And I'm joined live in the studio now by Omer Korkmaz, who's a political analyst. Omer, today a very exciting day for Turkey, exciting day for the world because it's showing democracy at work. 64 million Turkish voters eligible to vote today. Probably about 85%, maybe higher, have gone to actually cast their vote. Well, what's your feeling about today?
First of all, as a Turkish citizen, I am very proud that Turkish democracy is one of the most strongest democracy of the world, not only in Turkey, even in Europe and in the world. So this is something we are proud of that. Secondly, we are very grateful to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that we passed these elections through a very peaceful way. You see, still now there is no problem. We don't expect any problem. Number three, existing government provided almost more than 600,000 policemen to run these elections. So it means we have very good experiences in Turkish elections since 1950s. So many discussions and many rumors about Turkish democracy and dictatorship and the dictatorship of Erdogan all raised in today's election. So we are proud that Turkish people could show their will very freely.
I wanted to stay with that point because, as you know, we have viewers all around the world, and this is actually too important a point to get out. The media is making all sorts of stories about a lack of democracy. They've been calling some of the tabloids and magazines around the world have been making some very disgusting statements in the UK, in France, in the United States, calling President Erdogan a dictator, saying that there's no democracy here. What is it specifically that makes you confident to say, as your first point, as you just did, Turkey is showing the world a lesson in democracy? What gives you the confidence to say that?
You see, first of all these magazines and the centers who wanted to maneuver Turkish elections will not be accepted by Turkish electors. This is number one. Number two, if there is a dictatorship in any country, majority of the people, like 99% of the people, are voting for one leader. You can study the countries where dictatorship is already existing. If you look at Turkish elections, still now the future of Erdogan is not clear. You see, he might take 52%, 53%, or he may not pass 50%. So even in this evidence shows that there is a democracy in this country, you see. Maybe even we can go second round in this election. So it means even only this evidence shows that there is evidence. If free elections is part of democracy, you see. If one of the criteria of democracy is the free elections, so this evidence only shows that Turkish democracy is very strong and that there is a democracy in this country.
And it's interesting, we have 4 candidates on the ballot for president.
Yes.
I was talking about the presidential election. At the moment, the latest results I can see, President Erdogan 51.4%,
yes.
Kemal Kılıçdaroğlu 42%, Sinan on 5.2%, and Muharrem İnce at 0.6%. And so we see a full spectrum of votes cast, not just one candidate, which the dictatorship would, as you just said, would have, and not just puppet candidates, because Kılıçdaroğlu has and his alliance have a very high votes count at the moment as well, but also 2 other candidates, one of whom dropped out 3 days ago.
Yes.
And so it's such a dynamic democracy that even the candidate can decide not to stand and still win 0.6% of the vote.
You see, that is why I said Turkish democracy is a very dynamic democracy. We are proud of that. So even still now, we don't know what will happen. After 2-3 hours, maybe within 1 hour, everything can change in this country. So generally, majority of the people are happy about the results in general. because for instance, next day, tomorrow, we will discuss who got the majority in the parliament, who is going to the president of this country. So all these discussions are showing that Turkish democracy is a very dynamic democracy, comparing with many countries.
And we should also talk about the fact that today isn't just about the presidential. We've been concentrating on that very much. But also the parliament is made up of many different parties. I think there are 26 different parties standing for election, hoping to take a seat in parliament. This, of course, also is not a sign of a dictatorship. It's also a sign of a vibrant democracy with a leading party as well as opposition. This is very important, isn't it?
You see, unfortunately, in this country, everybody is speaking very freely. Even they are speaking very freely against Erdogan's position, and they are speaking even against opposition parties, and they are speaking even against the state's decisions, against the state policies, and even the army policies, you see. Then they say that Turkey is a dictatorship, ruled by the dictatorship. So it means it is not logical to say about Turkish internal politics and regional politics and international politics. It is a dictator run by dictators. So at least in this election, we have to admit that Turkey is a democratic, running the democratic process in these elections.
Well, and a couple of people I was speaking to earlier, one from the United Kingdom, where they have fairly low turnout, around 50-60% for elections. Here, 85-90%. Our friend who was with us just a few moments ago is from the United States, when we've seen their election counts take days, weeks, and even with their electoral college, which again fudges results, or has the potential to at least. This is showing that here not only is Turkey very able to organise a vote count of tens of millions within hours, but is also able to respect those votes.
You see, let me tell you one thing. In this election, as you said, around 90% of the people participated in this election. This figure is very, very important. But on the other hand, something is very important about whether opposition parties or small parties or allied parties with the great parties. So all of them could encourage their voters to go to a ballot box and vote for their candidates. So all these things are showing that Turkish democracy is safe, and everybody is able to show their will very freely. So we are proud of that.
And indeed, President Erdogan has reduced the threshold required for a party to enter Parliament. As I remember, 20 years ago, it was more than 10%, and now the threshold for entry to Parliament has been reduced to 7% of the votes. So this is making it more making Parliament more readily available for smaller parties.
Erdogan is a very strange leader. He has a courage to change many things smoothly. You see, first of all, he is the one who gives the rights of votes to youngsters 18 years old. So people are saying to him that majority of the new generations may not vote for you. Why are you decreasing the age of the youngsters to 18 years, you see? So please don't make this. He said, no, we are trusting the youngsters. So new generations, we are leaving this country to the new generation. So they have to participate and learn democratic process in this country. So on the other hand, as you mentioned, that again, I mean, he has a courage to take very different decisions, although maybe some of his colleagues are not convinced too much. But when he decides, then he believes his youngsters, he believes in new generations, and he trusts his nation.
And in fact, last week I was speaking to the youngest male candidate for Istanbul, and he was evidently very enthusiastic, very excited about the opportunity as a young person to be a candidate for Parliament. Whether or not he'll win a seat tonight is yet to be seen, but he's actively participating not just in voting, but in able to he may be able to enter Parliament even before he finishes his university degree?
You see, participation in election or to be candidate in elections is a way of training in politics. So he will take a long time maybe to be in the parliament, and he will get maybe seat in the parliament maybe after 2-3 elections. Maybe even he can be after tomorrow he can be member of parliament. I am not sure, but this is a process. Erdogan was a youngster once upon a time, and he was getting training since from his young age. You see, he participated in politics as he was a 20 years young boy, young guy. So Erdogan opened the door for the new generations to be part of his party in politics, and just to learn how to run in elections and how to participate in elections. So all these things shows that Turkish democracy is safe, and people of Turkey in the future will handle the future of the country in these new generations who have already learned politics, who have already trusted in democracy. So nobody can change Turkish democracy into dictatorship or another way in this country.
So in very many ways, the youth of Turkey is the future of the country.
Yes.
This is something which is very special, because the demographic of the country is that it is very young. We saw President Erdogan recently, in the last couple of days, speaking to young people. I had a special forum. He was speaking to them, listening to their ideas. How much do you think these conversations influence him?
You know, in some conversations, you might think that the questions has been given before the youngsters, and they are asking the questions according to the wish of Erdogan, President Erdogan. But in last meeting, which he already did in the library of the library in Ankara, I have seen the questions. These questions were very much sensitive. They're very much delicate towards Erdogan. And he was not getting angry. He was replying these questions one by one, very smoothly, very, very practically. And the questions were very dangerous for, in fact, as a youngster towards a president. But in that sitting, as I have seen, things were very easy, and youngsters were asking their questions freely. And even if Erdogan didn't like the questions, but he replied all the questions, whether they are satisfied with the answers or not. That is something different. But what I have seen, it was a very free sitting and very relaxed meeting with the president.
So many important discussions continuing there, but this really brings me takes me back to where we came in. We can see that Turkey is a very young country in terms of it has a young demographic. It has an active role in politics. The election season has been very dynamic, with all parties campaigning and giving their points of view across. And yet, looking back from outside of Turkey, still we have this pressure on Turkey. Everybody is interested internationally. Everybody is interested in Turkish elections. Everybody is creating their propaganda against Erdogan. And the big question is actually just 3 letters. Why?
Because Turkey is a very important country as a regional power and international power and part of NATO. Okay. It's a very important power, militarily and economically, and it has a very big economy. Secondly, Turkey is a part of a global economy. So if there is a big collapse in Turkish economy, it will impact on the global economy and regional economies. So this is number 2. Number 3, we have, we say in Turkish, Turkey is bigger than its geographic land, So many people are waiting the result of these elections, whether in the West or in the East. So that is why it became the core center of the interest of regional and international powers. So these result of these elections are weighted by the Westerners and the Easterners. If you look at I know I have many contacts in international level. They are sending me a lot of messages. What will be the result of the elections? So this is this shows that Turkey is a very important country from many aspects and from many angles. So people want to know what will be the future of this country, this important country. For instance, our neighbors like Syrians and Iraqians and the Iranians, even Russia, Germany, France, and the United and America, United States of America, all of them are waiting the result of these elections. Why? You know, there is an election after 2-3 weeks in Greeks also. Mm-hmm. Who takes care about the Greeks elections? There are some other elections in other parts of the world, but everybody is focused on Turkish elections because Turkey is a very important country in international level.
In fact, today there's an election in Thailand. Did you know that?
I didn't know that. Thank you. I didn't know about that. Yes.
That's happening right now. And,
yes.
But the world, as you say, is focused on Turkey. Now, of course, it's these international relations which have particularly marked President Erdogan's role on the world. On the one hand, telling the United Nations the truth that they need to hear, that the world is bigger than five. We've seen the role that he's played in trying to bring some semblance of peace or to reduce tensions between Russia and Ukraine. We've also seen him building relations across Africa, South America, and in the Middle East. So just how important has his role been, and how important could he continue to be into the future?
You see, as you mentioned, Erdogan mentioned, even in United Nations and in all international platforms, world is bigger than five. It means something very important. We have to reshape the world again, and international law, and even United Nations law. You see, and internal activities of the United Nations. So this is number two. Number two. He is the voice of oppressed people in the world, you see. Many African leaders are standing with Erdogan, although there is no cultural relations, but there is a common background about freedom and about the economy, about international relations, about the role of Turkey in the United Nations, how Erdogan defends the rights of oppressed African people. So all these things made Erdogan an international leader.
I'd like to continue this conversation with you in just a moment. We're joined now live from Melbourne in Australia by Omer Korkmaz. Omer, thank you for joining us. I believe you're an economist and a very special economist because you've researched Turkey's situation very carefully and even prepared a documentary, The Untold Story, I believe. So how do you look on today's elections here in Turkey?
Well, thank you very much for having me. Yes, Untold Story is really what's been happening with the very successful transformation of Turkey's economy over the last 2 decades. And I think today's elections are basically voicing a confidence of people in that direction or the need to change that direction. I think the elections are very much revolving around the president's ability to handle and control the economy. Economy is also connected with the recovery that we have seen after the horrific devastation, after the earthquake. So economy is at the epicenter. And as I spent some time in Turkey talking, to the young people, taxi drivers, business people, professors, everybody has some story about the economy. And unfortunately, a lot of the media, a lot of the times, the story that they are telling is minimizing good that is happening, maximizing some kind of an anger. And I think today we will see what is the story regarding the economy and the future of the country that people believe.
I think many people recognize that the economy around the world has been very badly affected by by Putin's war on Ukraine. And coming on the heels of the COVID pandemic, which had already knocked the world for six, we were hoping at the beginning of last year that the COVID pandemic was finishing and things would begin to get back on his feet across the world. And then, of course, President Putin decided to invade Russia. So the reality is that the economy everywhere is hurting. But the hope for Turkey is that whilst Turkey has also been affected by this, that in the future, as you say, there have been foundations laid for a stronger economy. Can you tell us about that?
That's correct. Of course, the entire world has been affected during the pandemic and the war. What changed as a result of these things, as opposed, for example, when other financial crises happened, is that we now were affected on what we call supply side, which is your ability to make and produce things. So, when everybody cannot go to work, when you cannot open the factories because of the COVID, or when your price of energy goes up because exports is affected, or commodities. So it's become either more expensive to make any everyday things, or it becomes impossible to make, more difficult. So the price of all of these articles goes up. Now, in the past, what used to be happening is that you would control these things by demand, how much money is in the economy. So you would start managing that side of the things. There is also another geopolitical thing that is happening, that we have seen the shifting in the balance of powers. So, for instance, look at Russia, China, and U.S. There is decoupling between these economies. So the idea of globalization, when we didn't think about where our products are coming from, is coming to the end. So more and more the post-COVID and wars are teaching us that, for the things that we are consuming, it is of strategic importance that the source of origin or production is either domestic or in the close region. So this is what we call value chain. So what Turkey has been successfully preparing is exactly for this period. They have built their industrial base, meaning being able to produce things. I have visited factories in Bursa, in Kayseri, from the simple parts that they started producing there for the Renault, from the Ford. Now they're producing electric cars, drones, they're sending the satellites to the space. So we have seen much more sophisticated industrial base. On top of that, Turkey is now, leading in terms of infrastructure. So infrastructure allow you to move things. So suddenly you have a country that is able to produce things and is able to move the things in the middle of the global breakdown of supply lines. On top of that, what we are seeing is the monetary policies that were implemented. While not a lot of people were fan of them, what we are now seeing is actually that they protected the jobs. And the fourth thing that was very critical is that once you can produce things and move them quickly, your energy independence is critical in order to make that sector more competitive. Look at what's happening in Europe, for example. Due to the fact that there is no gas, you have been losing 1 million cars a quarter from German manufacturers, for instance. So the economy now is looking at the location. Where do we actually locate? Europe doesn't have energy. We don't want, as a world, Europe and Western world, we don't want to produce things in China. It's seen as an adversary. What will happen if they attack Taiwan as the Russia attacked Ukraine? It comes down to the geographical location at the country that is at the heart of global supply chains. So now Turkey didn't close the country during the COVID. They didn't want to limit supply of the money for businesses. They were pumping and growing and working. So suddenly this gap that emerged in the world in terms of the production and supply side of economics, is suddenly we see that Turkey much more strongly stepping into that space. And if you follow the exports, they have been the largest record-breaking exports. In the last 20 years. 20 years ago, exports were $30 billion. Now they're $250 billion. So that contributes to the growth of the jobs, to the GDP. And so we have seen that actually year before 2001, when everybody was saying that, Turkey is a dead finish, that stereotype, the sick man of the Europe was translated in a sick economy of the world. When that was happening in 2001, Turkey's growth was 11%, which was the fastest growth from G20 nations. This is at the time when some European countries has growth of minus 10 almost. Wow. So this is the story. I think this is something that a lot of people don't realize, that Turkey now is positioning itself to be really one of the top 10 economic forces in the world.
And it's also very tempting to look at the situation today and forget about what the situation was 20 years ago, which coincidentally is when Erdogan first took major political roles by starting the AK Party and entering Parliament. I've actually lived in Turkey since the year 2000, so I have seen a little bit of the before and after. The last 20 years, the things that you're talking about, the infrastructure in terms of roads and trains and even airport networks, quite apart from energy networks across the country, as well as new energy sources that have just been found in the last few years or coming online in the last few weeks even. All these things really build to something very powerful as a launching pad today for the future. These are things which we really have to hold on to.
If I could say about that, like, for example, one of the interesting things that you mentioned, the infrastructure, is that much of that infrastructure was built without going into too much debt. In fact, if you see the debt level of the government, it's very, very low. Government has been very disciplined. So as a proportion of GDP, the debt is very low. Why is that critical now? As people are heading to the poll, they need to think about that Turkey now needs maybe at least $100 billion, in my estimation, to rebuild those areas. And I visited those areas. How do you do it? Do you now go and borrow enormous amount of money at enormous interest rates? Or do you do what President has been doing and what country has been doing, which is very smart, new, innovative way of investment using the private partnerships and so on? These last 20 years, what people what people don't realize. I have a friend. He was a banker. He used to work in 90s. He lived now in Melbourne with me. He used to tell me in 90s, in the lead up to 2001 crisis that brought AK Party to power, you couldn't get the banks to borrow money to the business people in Turkey because they simply didn't trust the banks. And so the transformation that we are seeing, the optimism that we are seeing, the largest brands that are establishing their presence there is something, in my opinion, something that is actually the model for the region. When I made my documentary, Turkey Untold Story, I actually wanted to tell not just for Turkish people, but I wanted to tell it to the rest of the regions. Look at the rest of the regions, how they are doing. Some of the economists were comparing Turkey's inflation, and they were saying that Turkey performs worse than Venezuela, Sri Lanka, Lebanon. At the time when Sri Lanka was, starving, president ran out of the country because the country ran out of the food. Or Lebanon that ran out of electricity and you can't import things. And people are robbing the banks just to take their money, being celebrated as the heroes. So at that time, they were talking about Turkey as a country that is starving, while the country is actually self-sufficient. You look at the most of the economy in the world, they produce one or two things. But here we have a country that is actually self-sufficient, whether it's a food, whether it's, advanced things, increase in technology, increase in productivity. I was talking with the vice president of Bursa Chamber of Commerce, and he was telling me we are going from what used to be before export per kilo valued at $1 to $4 in Bursa. And then we are going to $8 at Bursa. Bursa that, takes imports 10 billion and exports 16. And these are the types of examples, What struck me the most is sometimes young people look at the TikTok Western media, which was very unfair to the country in the way that they portray their story. And that creates a little bit of a negative feeling in a lot of young people. Where I was talking with one young lady who was doing master in London, and she was telling me, do I have a future in this country? And I was shocked. You are telling me, do we have a future? I mean, what are you reading in terms of the newspapers and the articles where you are as a young person thinking that you don't have a future in this country? And this was what struck me, what led me to think like, I need to understand what's happening. How can it be?
So in a sense, there is a crisis of confidence among young people, but evidently not a crisis of confidence with President Erdogan, who is putting forward projects for the future and opening new projects. Most pertinently, perhaps, in the last month, the new financial hub that was opened in Istanbul. Well, what does that mean for Turkey and for the future?
I think that is going to position Turkey as a major hub between, London, New York, Hong Kong, and these other places. You're talking about a country that is spanning that actually financial center goes through 16 different time zones. So it will be open whenever every market is open, whether you're talking about in UK market, in any other part of the world. And from the flight zone, you are in the center of the activities. From the conversation that I have had with people, they are looking at something like that to invest money, to start the businesses. I know the government will be helping that happen. So this is positioning the country. This is actually telling you about aspirations of the country, that now they are seeing themselves as much more confident, ready to take on even bigger projects. And I really look forward to see what this next century will look for Turkey.
Well, it's the century of Turkey. Elmi Çolan, I want to thank you so much for joining us today and giving us a very insightful view into the economy, and encourage people to watch your documentary. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And still with me in the studio is Omer Korkmaz. So we're talking about the economy and seeing how there are different ways of looking at situations. Yes, it's true, there are many people who are hurting at the moment, but we have to remember, as we said, they're hurting around the world. So what as you see it, what is the reality at this moment?
You see, in this election, Turkish nation did not vote only for Erdogan's presidency. They voted for Turkish-Libya relations, they voted for Turkey-Syrian relations, and they voted for Turkey-Egypt relations. They voted for Turkish gas, they voted for Turkish petroleum, they voted against PKK, they voted. There are many fields. They voted for top special car for Turkey produced, and they voted for drones. They voted for many reasons. So that is why it seems that Turkish public in general didn't want to change the Turkish presidency, Turkish president, because they believe in peace and stability. So they are looking for peace and stability in this election. So still now I am looking at the result of the elections. It seems that we are not sure yet. This is a Turkish democracy. We can have many surprises next few hours, but still it seems that Erdogan might finish these elections with a very successful result. So even one single vote will decide who will be the future president of this country. So it means Turkish people are looking for peace, as Mustafa Kemal said, peace in the world, in the country, and peace in the world. So we are looking really in peace in our country, and we are looking for peace in our region and international level also. But we don't accept anything imposed on Turkey, especially on our democracy, any interference from international level on our democracy or statehood and or nationhood. Mm-hmm. So we want to keep our united public forces against any other aggressions against Turkey. In fact, those who wanted to manipulate Turkish elections through social media, they didn't understand, or they know, maybe I don't know how they did this mistake. They provoked Turkish youngsters because Turkey has very nationalist feelings towards their nation and towards their country. So those who wanted to provoke in different way against Erdogan, maybe they failed in these elections, and people voted to some extent in favor of Erdogan, not against him.
And indeed, it's very interesting. And in the last few days, we have the question following Muharrem İnce's retraction of candidacy. Although, as we see, he's still on the ballot today and
yes,
still getting about 0.5% vote. So even though he says I'm not running as president, he's still getting his votes counted today. On the one hand, the possibilities that it was organised by FETÖ, the Fethullah Gülen terrorist organisation. Opposition leader candidate Kemal Kılıçdaroğlu says that it was Russia that did this, which is quite a dangerous statement to be making in these times.
Yes. You see, it is a dangerous statement because Turkey has a very good relations with Russia to make balance between different superpowers, because Turkey has also good relations with England, Turkey has good relations with United States of America and other European countries. So Turkey is the only country who can talk to Russia nowadays about the war between Russia and Ukraine. So we did not take side in this war, although we have very good relations with both countries. That is why still Turkey can solve the food problem of the world, and Turkey is the only country can convince Russians and Ukrainians to supply food, at least even during the war, towards the oppressed nations of the world. So it means Turkey has a language to deal with all the countries. But when you say about Muharrem İnce's issue, blame Russia, you don't interfere, and why you did this and you don't have any evidence on that one. So it will not be good as a future president of country, because he is about to be president of this country, although he may not, but he was a candidate at least. It is not logical to give a statement like this against Russia. In fact, they wanted to imitate the Russians, as Americans blamed Russia also in the United Nations elections, but it will not work in Turkey, because Turkey has its own democracy and its own experiences. In fact, I was also very sad why he withdrew from these elections. But still, some people are voted for him, as we have seen the numbers. But I hope next time we will not repeat, any political leader will not repeat this kind of mistakes, because many people have some expectations and hopes, even with Muharrem İnce. So he was not supposed to withdraw from the elections. Maybe this is a maneuver, I am not sure. Maybe he is maneuvering for different targets. So he's a very clever person, by the way. But we will see what will happen in the next few days.
Absolutely. And we should also remember that in the last presidential elections, he was the main candidate against Recep Tayyip Erdogan.
By the way, this is a very important point you already pointed out. Why FETÖ groups or any group against Erdogan did not fabricate a cassette or anything, they did not blame him with anything during the time of election when he was against Erdogan? This is a very important question.
Absolutely. That is actually very interesting, isn't it?
Because they thought that his being in as a candidate in these elections will be helpful for Erdogan's position. That is why they wanted to destroy him in these elections in order to make Kılıçdaroğlu more progressive in these elections. But Turkish people are very clever. They know how to divert their votes from Muharrem İnce to which party, and the result is showing us.
Yes, indeed, and still the votes counting in over 50% for President Erdogan and 43%.
But still, if we look at these results, there is a possibility that we are going to go second round election campaign.
So if, as you bring that up, let's just talk about that momentarily, just very briefly. We've spoken about how the democratic structures are very clearly laid out here in Turkey, and they're very closely followed. Omer Çelik, the AK Party spokesperson, was earlier telling the nation the importance of the transparency in these elections. Now, there is a possibility that tonight we won't have a final result for the presidency. The winning candidate has to receive more than 50% of the votes in order to have won. If none of the candidates receive more than 50%, then there will have to be a runoff vote. What can you tell us about that?
If these results finish like this, it seems that, of course, still we have time to get the last results.
So hopefully it won't happen. But just
if it happens,
in a nutshell, what would it mean?
If it happens, there are three political leaders who now, but in next election there will be only next round there will be only two leaders. That is Kılıçdaroğlu and Erdogan.
Probably.
So the question: where will go the votes of Sinan Ogan? what will be the where will be the votes of Sinan Ogan's supporters? Whether they will support or they will vote for Erdogan or Kılıçdaroğlu. This is the question. This is the question, isn't it?
His was lovingly known as the kingmaker.
Okay, he is kingmaker. But this is a question.
Yeah.
So let us reply this question. You know, who is Sinan Ogan? He was one of the very radical nationalist leader in his young age. From Turkish nationalism, he belonged to Turkish nationalist background. So what will happen in these elections? How he will direct his supporters in next round? Even if he says, for instance, I am going to be with Kılıçdaroğlu, or if I am going to be with Erdogan, do you think that Turkish supporters, his supporters, 100% will listen to him? No. So according to my expectation, at least if they divide it into 50-50, okay, 50% of them will vote for Erdogan, and Erdogan will be the winner in this second round elections. If even the 60% of the Sinan Ogan's supporters supported Kılıçdaroğlu, again Erdogan will be the winner in the second elections. But still now Turkish democracy has surprises for us. We are not sure 100%. Let me tell you also at the end.
Well, nobody wants to have a second round. If the second round does happen, it will be on the...
But anyhow, Turkish people, it shows in this election that Turkish people is looking for peace and tranquility and stability in this country and in this region and in this world.
And it also shows that Turkish people clearly have the free will
Yeah.
and the ability
Yes.
to vote for who they want to. And that's what's so exciting about today. We're looking at the results, and they're very close at the moment. We're hoping that a final result will be delivered today. Because otherwise we'll be sitting here again in 2 weeks' time.
Yeah. It means I will come again.
No, I hope so.
Let me tell you something very strange in this election campaign. Turkish families in general, they are divided into two parts. One part of the families are conservative families, and another part of another families are very much secular families, okay? In these two different families, background of families, are something very strange is taking place. What happened? In very conservative families, some of the members of the family who were supporting Erdogan in the past, they supported Kılıçdaroğlu. Or they supported Akşener, for instance. They supported Muharrem İnce. It didn't happen in the past too much. But on the other hand, some of the very much secular families, members of the family, because of some national sentiments and concerns, even against their family decisions, they voted for Erdogan. So it means Turkey has a very healthy democratic process, and they are voting according to their own wish and their own wills, and even they don't listen to their family elders.
And this also is further complicated. As you said, there are many issues that are important to every individual, and every individual is influenced by different issues. On the one hand, we've just been talking about the economy, but on the other hand, there's the threat of terrorism. There's also the support that Turkey is giving to migrants coming into the country, and how to enable their homelands to be returned to stable and safe and secure places, particularly the north of Syria. President Erdogan's been working very hard to ensure security for the Syrian people against the PKK terror organization and its offshoots. So all these issues are influencing people. What do you think has been the top issue for the Turkish nation today?
I think the top issue is economy. Because Turkish people, if Erdogan was in another country, even if he was in any Western country, if he could save the country from COVID-19 in this way, if he opened the big hospitals and very good fractured hospitals, he could take maybe 70% of the votes in those countries. But unfortunately, many of our brothers and sisters in this country could not understand that Turkish economy is part of global economy. So any problem in international economy and global economy also creating a negative impact on Turkish economy. That is why they are looking only within the limit of Turkish economy. They are facing problem and something like that. But look at the France economy. You see, those who are already demonstrating in the streets of Paris for about the rate of their retirement money. So they are creating a lot of disturbance for their own country because of these retirement policies. In Turkey, Erdogan gives a lot of opportunities and chances for retirement people and the officers in the government and many people. But still now, of course, because of problems in international economy, Turkey has first agenda is number one agenda is economy. But I am sure because of new developments in Turkish gas in Black Sea and Mediterranean Sea, and Turkish petroleum is already discovering many new wells, and so within 2 years, as Erdogan said, we are going to share the income of this Turkish gas and Turkish petroleum with the people. So when he shares with Turkish people and when Turkish people become more wealthy, more healthy, then things will be much better in Turkey.
Absolutely. So all these things working together and pushing people in different directions. I think it's really fascinating that that if you look at Turkey from outside, if you believe everything you read in the newspapers, then you miss all of this rich dynamic that's inside the country, and you don't see the fact that it's not the same country it was today as it was in the 1980s or 1990s or even 2000. It's a different place today. How has Turkey changed during the period of Erdogan's tenure?
Let me tell you frankly one important statement. I think that is very important. You know, Turkey has a very important democracy, yes, a very strong democracy, yes. But Turkey has a historical background also. We are in the center of the world. Istanbul is the capital of the world, whether you accept or not, but Istanbul is the capital of the world. So this country, in the past, during the Roman times, especially Istanbul, ran the regions in many centuries. So what I wanted to say in this part, Turkey is a very important country. If you look at the result of the elections, only to the president, about the president of this country, yes, these are important. I don't minimize the importance of these things, but they have to look at the culture. What is the intellectual life of this country? Who are the main poets in this country? Who are what is the cinema sector in this country? What are the main films produced Turkey in this period? What are the main books has been published in this country? Who are intellectuals of this country? They don't look at these points. So they look at the result of the elections after every 4 or 5 years. You know, there is a very strong dynamic and waves, very deep waves in this country, which is giving result and support to the elections. So we have to understand deep waves, intellectual and cultural waves in this country to understand why Erdogan is getting this much vote in these elections.
Well, I want to thank you so much for all that insight, Omer Korkmaz.